It's a Wonderful Life, directed by Frank Capra in 1947. An angel is sent from heaven to help desperately frustrated businessman George Bailey, played by James Stewart, by showing him what life would have been like if he had never existed. So this movie is my pick. I picked this because it is extremely relatable. There's a reason every single year people watch this movie over and over, because the character of George Bailey is just about anybody. Everybody has dreams. Everybody has dreams that have been unfulfilled, whether it's because of circumstances that have derailed their life journey, whether it's because they got married and had kids, or it's because, they just gave up on their dreams. Everybody has that relatability to George Bailey's character. So George Bailey, he's tried to, visit these far off places. He's tried to become an architect, an engineer, but time after time, he just can't do it because his father dies. He has to take over his business. His brother comes home from college. He promised him he would take over for him. That way he could go to college himself, but he gets married and gets a job offer of his own. So he keeps getting stuck to the Bailey building and loan. And then we have the Mr. Potter character that is constantly trying to get his hands on that business, and he almost out of guilt, he keeps hanging on to that building and loan just so Potter cannot take it. So by the end, he thinks he's dejected. There's a crisis where he could be going to prison for bank fraud, and he looks to end his life. And that's when the angel comes and shows him what life would have been like if he had not have lived. And then that's the famous ending where he's running through the town of Bedford Falls and just understands, yes, life is absolutely worth living, no matter how dejected or how awful you think your life is. Imagine what things would not have been like, or would have been like if you had never been born. All right, so I want to open this up to Matt and Corey. I'll start with Matt first. What do you think of It's a Wonderful Life?
There's some things that I agree with you on, and you talked about George Bailey being a relatable character. He definitely was relatable. I think we've all can attest that we've been through trials and tribulations, and sometimes things don't always go our way, but at the end we somehow realize that, well, if all these things wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here where I am today. I thought that the overall message, the story, the actors, the actresses, all well thought out, all well played. There was a couple of funny things that I saw during it. While he is relatable, he kind of reminded me of maybe being the first millennial. And the reason why I say that is because, he wants to get out of that small town. He wants to go out there, explore the world. He's going to worry about all the other stuff whenever he gets back. And he wants it right now, and he wants to act quick. But his moral compass just won't let him do that. He cares too much about everyone else, and he puts his own dreams aside. And I think that's where he breaks that mold and becomes that relatable character. The other thing is, he's the tallest guy in the entire town. I mean, he's got legs for days. There's nobody that's taller, which I don't understand, because his dad wasn't tall, his mom wasn't tall. I
His
don't
brother
know.
wasn't either.
His brother's not tall.
No,
He was kind of short.
brother's short. Tallest guy in the world, and you can really know how tall he is whenever he has to get into the car or he has to sit down on a couch, especially in the scene where he sits down on the couch with Mary. It looks like he's sitting on a mini sofa. It's just, that I just noticed that. So
It's funny. I've seen this movie hundreds of times. Now that I think about it, when he sits down on a couch, his knees are up by his ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, coming from someone who's pretty short, it made me a little jealous, but it's fine.
Yeah, there was a lot of people that were Corey's size in the movie.
Yeah, it made me feel clean.
I mean, girls, guys, mostly girls that were short as Corey.
Okay with that.
But, overall, Adam, I did enjoy the movie. I did make a couple more notes, but I want to hear from Corey and what he thought.
Yeah.
before I give anything else.
So this was my first time ever seeing It's a Wonderful Life. So I didn't really ever grow up watching it. This is not like a normal holiday thing for me. So it is my first time seeing it. So I did like the character of George. I thought his journey to me was, he went from someone who, as Adam said, he was mostly doing things just because it was kind of expected of him, or because of guilt. But I think at the end, after, you know, the angel, and he kind of has the epiphany, he realizes that like it was his choice all along, kind of, you know. And I think that was important, not, you know, for him to actually take ownership of his own life, versus thinking that it was always these circumstances that put him in there. I think that was important. It wasn't exactly what I would consider a long movie. It was only 2 hours long. It felt longer than that. I understand, obviously, that they had to develop the character, but I feel like they could have probably cut a couple of those years out and still probably got it across. Yeah, I mean, I really liked his wife, Mary. I thought that she was played pretty well. Thought it was shot well. Looked great. I mean, I understand for the time. I made the mistake. Sorry, everyone. I watched it in color. I didn't watch it in black and white. I didn't know that this was a thing. I've been instructed I need to rewatch it. But I thought overall it was a good movie. I had some problematic things just with the time, but it's just kind of what you would come to expect with a older movie. Child labor laws, you know, that kind of stuff, hitting kids, like, you know.
So you bring that up. You bring up a couple things. First, I want to comment on the colorization of It's a Wonderful Life. I am 100% against colorizing old movies. I think that is extremely sacrilegious to say that, you know, oh, it's going to be better. We can actually improve on this movie by colorizing it. It's not like they didn't have color film in 1947. You know, Gone with the Wind was created in 1939. So, you know, it's a choice, either an economic choice or an artistic choice. So colorizing it in today, terrible idea. But that was kind of a thing back about 20 years ago. They started colorizing old movies, and I think Martin Scorsese was the one who said, absolutely not, we're not doing this, you know, cut it down. And then you mentioned the child labor. Is there any way, even in 1919, that Gower wouldn't have been arrested for beating the crap out of young George Bailey?
I think you could, back in 1919, I think you could pretty much hit anybody you wanted.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive that if the cop saw it, I don't think he would do anything.
He would probably join in.
Yeah.
Even like, hey, did he do something bad? Oh, he didn't make a delivery on time?
Yeah.
Could hit him hard.
I mean, that was tough love back in the day,
Yeah.
right? Some would say that if he would have never been hit, then maybe he wouldn't have grew up to be the man that he was.
Yeah.
I do want to clarify, we're not condoning
No.
hitting kids. Okay.
No,
we're not condoning hitting
we're just
kids.
saying-
Well, here's my question. Where was George's dad when he comes home with a bloody ear, saying, "Hey, how'd you bloody your ear?" What is George going to say? "Oh, I must have fell"?
Yeah.
No, I mean, what kid would say, you know, would lie to stick up for some old druggist that is employing him? No, he's going to say, "Oh, Gower hit me in the side of the head." So then, why is George's dad not doing anything about that?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think back in the day, right, it was different, obviously. If he were to go to his dad, I'm sure the dad said something like this, like, "Well, did you deserve it? Were you doing something you shouldn't have been doing? Did you backtalk?" You know, I mean, that's how it was back then.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you know, you almost have to ask permission to even punish your child. So, you know, Corey, I don't know, are from your standpoint, you start thinking about that. Could you imagine hitting one of your kids and the backlash? No. I mean, it'd be hell on earth. Yeah. So,
but I think,
I think they put it in there. I don't know that it needed to be in there, to be honest with you. You know, I get it. At the end, they had to tie it back in, and you had to show that if he wouldn't have done that and caught the poison pill and stopped all that, then all this stuff wouldn't have happened. And I get that part, but I don't know. They put it in there for a reason, obviously.
I think it was pretty evident the reason why he probably didn't tell his dad, because his dad, he even tried to go tell his dad about the pills and like what to do with them, and his dad was too busy for him. So I think that's just kind of like seems like a little bit of a family curse, just being that busy with work, and it kind of passed on to George from his father. I mean, the moment he got married, instead of going on his honeymoon, he went straight in to go save the business and to save all these loans and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall,
yeah, that's the thing with George. I mean, he just can't catch a break. I mean, he could never seem to get ahead. I mean, even when he got married, he has that stack of cash saying, all right, we're finally going to actually get out of Bedford Falls, finally. And then there's a huge run at the bank. And then that also spills over to the savings or the ability and loan, and people want to withdraw their money. And it's like, is he ever going to be able to take a vacation ever?
Yeah.
And so I totally get why George is so dejected at the end. It's like, it's one after the other after the other. And I mean, if I was in his shoes, I absolutely would have been like, I'm giving up. This is awful. And it takes that, it does take that supernatural or that religious experience to bring you back and say, look at your wife and kids. Look at who all of you helped. Look at everything in this town and say, this is because of you, buddy.
I mean, especially with his wife and kids, I feel like he probably should have been a little more thankful. And obviously, like that whole scene of him in the house after he figured out that he's in trouble, I didn't take for that whole scene personally. Just because, I mean, I obviously understand that you're having hard times, but you really can't. I don't know. It was hard to. I don't know. I can't believe Mary went and did that much stuff for him after how he acted, but.
Yeah, but that's, I was gonna say, Mary's your ride or die.
Yeah, she's the moral compass in my mind of the movie after he gets to a certain age.
Yeah, I forget who said it, but behind every great man, there's a great woman, and Mary was that woman.
Yeah.
From the beginning, Mary waited. Mary passed up. Mary took a chance. Mary let him walk all over her whenever she went to the house, while Mary's mother was living vicariously, trying to get, what's his name? Sam
Wainwright, Hee-Haw.
Yeah, Hee-Haw. She was wanting to get some cash and her go that way. Meanwhile, George Bailey's sitting on the couch with his knees to his chin because of how tall he is, and he's treating her like garbage.
Me? Not a thing. I just came in to get warm.
He's making violent love to me, Mother.
You tell him to go right back home, and don't you leave the house either. Sam Wainwright promised to call you from New York tonight.
And she still was there for him. Yeah. And throughout the whole movie, she was always there for him. She was always helping and always right there, no matter how bad it got, thick or thin.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think you both are right that Mary, I mean, George, the success that George actually does have that he doesn't see is a lot because of Mary. And Mary is, the reason for his eventual happiness at the end. Because you're right, at her house, after she comes back from college and she's waited, and she could have, started dating Hee-Haw, but she waited for George, and what was that, a cross stitch or a painting of George lassoing the moon?
Yeah.
It's like if when we were dating, if my wife did that for me, I'd been like, this is amazing, Instead, he's like, oh yeah, well, whatever, I don't care. And so let's talk about that particular scene. Corey, the way George acted to Mary, did that make you uncomfortable? How did you react to that scene?
That's the thing I said about most of the time with George is that they go through every kind of different going through the years of his life to make him either likable or unlikable, just through the different ones, just as far as how he treats different people around his life. Obviously, does a lot of good things, but in that particular scene and just, how he treats her sometimes, I'm like, I'm not a big fan of that, but, I think overall it was needed to be shown so you could see how he develops at the end.
Yeah, see, I am extremely uncomfortable during that entire scene, especially, especially the way he treats Mary. He's like, oh, I just came to get warm. I don't care. I don't care about you. But I totally get why he's acting that way. He realizes that he absolutely does like her. He's liked her from, back when they met at the Charleston contest. But if he gets serious with her, that is it for him and his dreams. He's not traveling. He's not going to be a architect or engineer that he always wanted to be. He's going to stay in Bedford Falls, work at the building loan the rest of his life, and have a bunch of kids. And he's at a crisis moment, I think, in that particular scene. And his love for Mary obviously just takes over, and he makes the right choice.
Well, look at her.
Yeah.
She's a 10.
I have a question. Is she the little girl at the beginning of the movie? Like when he's working at the bar? So he met her then before the Charleston dance.
Well, the two girls, the brunette is Mary.
Make sure I wasn't losing my mind. That was actually Mary at the beginning.
And the blonde that says, where she says, "Oh, you like every boy," and she goes, "What's wrong with that?" That's the other blonde that grows up and he helps, financially.
Yeah, the loosey-goosey girl.
Yeah.
She can do whatever she wants.
Where she goes, I'll tell you what, a scene that I forgot about, and I couldn't believe they put it in there. She's talking to two guys, and George is walking down the middle of the street, and she leaves the two guys, basically tells them that, like, oh, I'm going after him, but stick around in case this doesn't work. And then the two dudes are like, yeah, hun, we're going to wait here.
We'll wait for you, baby.
Yeah, we'll wait for you, baby doll. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you're desperate. I mean, Bedford Falls, I don't think there was a lot of pickings in that town. And I think she was one of the three that were single and willing.
Yeah, no, definitely a different time.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our favorite and our least favorite moments. Corey, what is your favorite and least favorite moment of It's a Wonderful Life?
The actual Christmas part of the movie. I enjoyed that. So like the last 40 minutes, so from the moment the angel actually gets there, shows them this dystopian Vegas future, which seems fun to visit. Obviously, you don't want to live there, but like I could go there for a weekend. Just the ending, everyone coming together to help save him at the end so he doesn't go to jail for his uncle's mistake. That's one thing we don't talk about. His uncle's just careless. But just the overall ending, I really enjoyed it. The actual Christmas part. Let
me pause you right there because we haven't mentioned Uncle Billy. Matt, you work in business. Would you give anybody financial responsibility who has a pet squirrel?
Let me tell you something. Uncle Billy, throughout George's entire life, has been a crazy wacko nut job screw up.
Yeah.
And we're going to give him $8,000 in an envelope, and then he starts talking trash to Potter and screws everything up. And then I just every turn, like you can't tell me that they can't just tell him to stay home. Like, hey, we will pay you to just stay home. Don't come to the bank. Don't come to the loan office. Just stay where you're at. Okay? Play with your squirrel. All right, and just stay.
Yeah, I think Potter is obviously structured as the villain throughout the movie. That or just like being quote unquote shackled down. But I think the uncle could also because the uncle could have just taken over, but he didn't want to. I don't think he could. So I think that's the reason why George had to take over to begin with. But
the board wouldn't let him.
Yeah, because
the board
knew Squirrel Man's not going to be able to get in charge.
Yeah, what board is going to be like? All right, here's our options. We have Potter could just take everything. George Bailey, the tallest, most handsome man in the entire town. Okay, or they pan over to the corner and you see Uncle Billy with his squirrel going. Who's gonna go for that?
He's tying 5 strings on his fingers, so what he's gonna do that day.
God, so ridiculous.
All right, so let's go back to Corey. You said you didn't like it because it's really not, or your least favorite is
Well, I didn't go with my least favorite yet.
You didn't? Okay, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. But you
So-
said you criticized a little bit because you say it's not really a Christmas movie because the Christmas part is toward the end, which I get that.
Yeah.
But before you answer anything else, is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I would say yes.
Oh, God.
It happened on Christmas Eve. There's Christmas trees visible throughout the whole movie. So yes, it did take. It's a Christmas movie. Yippee-ki-yay. Anyways, my least favorite, besides just like how it felt long, even though it wasn't long, they could have cut out some stuff. Just the beginning, the interpretation of angels being little galaxies. I understand that the technology at the time, but I feel like you probably could have done something better. I don't know. I just was watching it like, what did I get into? I thought this was supposed to be like a critically acclaimed movie, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm watching right now. And then I had to get going, and I was like, oh, okay, they're angels. And one's a star, but the other ones are galaxies. It's because he doesn't have wings. When he gets wings, does he become a galaxy?
They don't really talk about that, and there hasn't been a sequel.
These
Sure.
are problems I have.
Sure. I mean, the alternative at the time period would have had been the two angels with wings on a cloud, followed by Clarence, who doesn't have his wings, running up to him. I think that would have been a lot worse than the galaxy interpretation of angels. I just wish they wouldn't have given us that really fake-looking planet or moon that kind of floats by like this while they go into the galaxy, because that's just like, All right, so we'll get your rating here in a minute. Matt, what did you think? What's your favorite and least favorite moment?
My favorite moment was, whenever it's after they've fallen in the pool at the Charleston, doing the Charleston dance competition in the gymnasium, and they're walking home, and Mary's in a bathrobe of sorts, and he's got on a football uniform that's 3 sizes too big, and they're just kind of on this puppy love high, flirting and living it as they were both 18, 19 years old, and they've always had a thing for each other. It was apparent and obvious at the dance itself. But we get the famous line, George looks at Mary and says, "What do you want, Mary? I'll give you anything you want. You want the moon? I'll lasso the moon and pull it down for you." And I think that we can all relate not only to George, but to those moments whenever we were all younger. Relationships were more playful. It was more innocent and fun, and there was something about it. And as we get older, things in life get serious, and the playfulness is still there, but there's something unique about that love and that feeling that you get whenever you're, in that stage in your life. So that whole scene, which there is one thing, whenever he steps on the robe, and the robe obviously is on the ground, leading to her being naked, and she's in the bush. There's one thing I want to point out there is that she shakes the bush multiple times. Like the bush is just like shaking, okay? And at the end, whenever he finds out that his father had a stroke, and he got in the car and he said, "I have to leave," Mary pops her head up. Whenever Mary pops her head up, her hair is in perfect condition, okay? Which, again, thought it was a little bit weird, right? You would think that she would have a twig in it, something. No, perfect. So I don't know what kind of hairspray they used, what kind of pins were going on, but come to think of it, nobody's hair was out of place except for George Bailey's whenever he was running around. Now,
I think that scene takes place like the 1920s, so I'm sure they put something like lead and asbestos in the hairspray.
You're not wrong.
I mean,
I was gonna say it's a little thing called movie magic, but I think asbestos and lead's better.
Yeah.
Which, that was my favorite. My least favorite was actually the dance. Like, everybody's doing the Charleston, okay? They're having a contest. Everybody's dressed to the nines. Nobody's sweating, okay? Nobody. Not an ounce of sweat. I sweat whenever I walk up a flight of stairs. There were people in there going 100 miles an hour. No one's sweating. And then they open up the guy that's mad because George came over and talked to Mary, opens up the gymnasium floor, and then, George and Mary fall into the pool while dancing. And then everybody else just starts diving in. I know that he had to meet her at the dance. I get it. But that whole scene, I just wasn't a fan of. So that was my least favorite.
So interesting. Your least favorite moment is actually my favorite moment. Now, outside the ending, I think the ending to most people, and probably all of us, is probably the best moment of the movie. That ties everything in. It's kind of hard not to get choked up when all of his friends are coming and everybody he's helped throughout the years comes in and donates to his problem. But outside of that, my favorite moment is the Charleston dance singing contest. The reason is because I just love that 1920s, atmosphere and that time period with the Charleston and the music. I love how they're competing for a genuine loving cup, which I think those should absolutely be brought back. I don't know why kids are participating or competing for participation trophies and all that now. It should be a cup. It should be a cup with the name of the contest and the year on it. Anyway,
Something made of
what do you say that?
Something made of lead,
Something made of lead
I want something
or asbestos. Absolutely. So that's my favorite moment. I love when the pool opens up, which, by the way, do you guys know who that is at the dance, who's talking to Mary and kind of boring her with his story? And then
The talkative guy who opened up the pool?
Yeah, who opened up the pool. You know who that is?
Nope.
That is the original Alfalfa from The Little Rascals.
That's also a troubling movie production. We can talk about that one day. Also, the other thing about that pool, it made me terrified. Because what happens if you because it doesn't open up all the way. There's people going underneath, what? It didn't open up all the way. People could have drowned.
I was looking at that too. I was thinking could they be crushed? Could they be crushed? Well, there's about, I don't know how much that would be, but there's about that much difference between the water line and the top of the floor. So
yeah, people were going underneath that.
Yeah, so they could survive. They're fine. They're good.
Yeah, but they just started jumping in. They just kept jumping in.
What would you have done? I mean, remember how we were in high school? If we had a basketball court that opened into a pool and it just happened to do that at our prom, you don't think
I probably would have jumped in.
Yeah, I would have too. It's a rental.
Yeah, the only thing
especially if I was with Mary.
Yeah. Oh, the only thing that's unacceptable is why is the principal being so I think that was the principal, right? He was
very
young at heart, and he jumped in too, and I was like, you have no business jumping in the pool with a bunch of high schoolers, man.
Right?
Yeah, that wouldn't fly in today's world.
Yeah.
Different time period. You can beat kids and you can jump in pools with teenagers.
You're not wrong.
All right, so my least favorite moment was Mary's alternate reality. So when Clarence tells George, okay, you've never been born, here's what it looks like. And they go through Bedford Falls, which honestly isn't that bad. Mary's alternate reality where she's a librarian, she has never married, I think that is completely lazy storytelling, and it really doesn't do it doesn't give her character enough justice. Because we've already talked about, she is the moral compass of this movie. She is the reason George, I think, is successful in the long run. They could have given her a much better alternate reality. They could have made her, she would have absolutely got married. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind she would have got married. She had a lot of attention from not only George Wainwright, but from Alfalfa at the dance too. Somebody would have, proposed to her and she would have got married. She could have been a divorcee. She could have been an alcoholic. She could have been in an abusive relationship. Something with more depth than just, oh, you're not going to like it, George. She's an old maid. She's closing up the library.
Yeah,
come on. It's
There's no reason for her to look that old like everyone else for the time period. The guy the guy who went to jail for poisoning kids in the movie. He looked the same, and I'm like, why does she look like she's 75? And it's not necessarily she also went to college, so she could do something else. Well, I don't understand why she wouldn't be doing something else besides just
Mary. Yeah, Mary was a dime piece. She was a 10. She was hot as can be. Okay, just because George isn't born doesn't mean she gets less hot. She would have been hot. She would have went to school. Okay, and if you're gonna make her a librarian, okay, and make her work at the library, make her a hot librarian. Do something. Okay, I mean, I know it was the time, but to your point, Adam, you know, I think if I recall, like, it was just even her clothes were like not the normal like clothes for the time.
No,
like,
I mean,
it was like downplayed tremendously.
Yeah.
No, it was definitely she was like, you know, from neck to ankles, like covered in just like this bland, drab outfit, and she had on these unflattering glasses and a hat with her hair back in a bun. Yeah, I get they were trying to make it look like she would have been, you know, extremely unhappy if George hadn't been there, but she probably would have been happy for a little bit. But in order to drive the point home, again, she should have had a better alternate reality where it made her look like her life would have been a lot worse if it hadn't been for George, and not in the way that they gave her. All right, so any final comments before I get your rating out of 10 on this movie?
No, I'm good. I mean, I think it's apparent that Corey, if it doesn't have a talking reindeer or an action hero stuck in a vent with a wife beater on, yelling profanity, then it's not a Christmas movie. So with that, I don't have any comments.
Yep. I will say, John McClane, even though he went through a lot, I think he's probably a better husband. Even though that's like his ex-wife being ex-wife. He goes through a lot, guys. He killed terrorists. Anyways, Russian, right? They were Russian, right? I haven't seen them in a while. Anyways,
they were German.
German, that's what they were. Dang it. Hans Gruber. What am I doing?
What is your rating, Corey?
So I'm going to give this movie 2 ratings, okay? I'll give it an overall rating 2, but as a Christmas movie, I would say it's a 6 out of 10. It was disappointing. I was recommended this as a holiday movie. It wasn't. It was a timepiece, and then with a little bit of holiday on it, and I was like, oh, okay. But overall, as a movie, I would probably say it's like an 8.5. It was very well made for the time. I enjoyed it. I made the mistake of watching it in color. I'll go back. I'll fix that mistake. So I would say overall, then I would probably put it. I'm gonna weigh it down a little bit. As an 8 overall. That's my rating.
8 overall. So you did like it then? I
enjoyed it. I thought it was still a good movie. I just don't think it's a holiday movie for me personally. I don't have the nostalgia for it, but I thought overall it was a good movie. I would watch it again.
All right, fair enough. Matt, what is your rating?
I really had to rate this a 9 out of 10. I loved the story, the characters. I did like how, you know, you could really relate to George. You could relate to certain situations going on in his life. And the way they wrapped up the story at the end, it was an awesome message. And I'd have to go a 9 out of 10.
Very good. And no surprise, I think this is a 10 out of 10. This is not only one of the best Christmas movies ever made, but I think it's one of the best movies in general ever made. I think there's a reason why this movie has lasted for as long as it has. I mean, I can't think of any other movie made in 1947, but I know one. It's a Wonderful Life. So I just love the message. I love James Stewart's portrayal of George Bailey. I thought he did an absolute home run in his performance. And Donna Reed as Mary. I mean, it's hard not to love her.
Yeah, she was great.
For me, it is a 10 out of 10. Okay, so next week we're reviewing another Christmas movie. Corey, what are we reviewing?
Next week we're going to talk about a real holiday classic. It's Christmas through and through. It's a true classic from the 90s, 92, I believe. It is Kevin McAllister in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. That's right, I chose the second one. Watch next week to find out why I love this movie.
All right, and with that, we'll wrap up this review. If you liked what you watched, if you want to support us, go ahead and like the video and then subscribe below. And we'll see you next week with Home Alone 2. Not 1. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.